Thank you so much, Mike. I'm here talking today about my master's research. Um, so I am in a deprived school, and I myself was deprived as a student. So I found my own belonging in that, and that inspired me to go through and perform my own research. Um, so since the beginning of my
So,
studies, I've developed a particular interest in inclusive education, specifically in relation to the implications for social justice within comprehensive schools in the UK. A comprehensive school is we've got few, just for those who aren't aware, a comprehensive school is sort of the state school provision. Then you have grammar schools, which are sort of you have to pass examinations to enter them. And then there's the private education system, which is fee-paying schools. And I work within that comprehensive state school. Um, my reflections have centered on examining where students experience a sense of belonging within the school environment and considering how schools can foster those such feelings of belonging through inclusive practice through the lens of Warhammer. I've done it again. I've done the blooming screenshot again. Usually in lessons, I can click with a different thing. So here's my research question. This is what I was looking at. So how do students attending the Warhammer Club at a state secondary school perceive their attendance at the club and how it affects their sense of belonging in the school? Before that, I need to talk a little bit about myself because it's so important as to where I am now and what this research has come from. So my name is Matthew Davis-Wright. I'm a secondary school science teacher in a deprived area where 40% of our students are in receipt of 3 school meals and are classified as pupil premium. It's here that I started the club. Again, a little bit more context. What that means is students who are in receipt of 3 school meals. There are different categories. So if you are a child who is in a family in receipt of benefits, if you're a child from a military family, so where you're constantly moving between schools, and if you are a child who is a child in care. Any one of those 3 categories would put you as pupil premium, which would make you eligible for free school meals. So we have quite a high proportion of students who sort of come under that remit. I myself was a pupil premium student at a grammar school, so I didn't go to a comprehensive. I went to a school where you had to pass an exam to get into. I've been involved in the hobby since I was 10, following a subscription to a Lord of the Rings miniatures wargaming magazine that I got as a kid, which sent me down the path. So I've been doing it a little bit longer than you, Ben. During my time at grammar school, I attended a Warhammer Club and found my own community in which I developed my own skills in both miniature modeling, wargaming, as well as developing social skills. My positionality as both a former student navigating exclusion and a current teacher striving to foster belonging frames that sort of research lens. So I see Warhammer Club not merely as just a game to play, but rather as a site of resistance to inequality within our education system. So that's where creativity, community, and social justice, all these things can be cultivated within that education system. So firstly, the club. So our club is a whole school club. That means students who are from year 7 up to year 13. So that's from 11 up to 18 years old can attend the club. It's a free space in which any students, when they do attend, there's no prescribed activities per se. It's much more a case of, this is Warhammer Club. Have you ever done Warhammer? If they haven't, or modeling, more sort of generically. I sort of then ask them what do they want to do, show them what we have. So, for example, we have, again, like Ben was saying, 3D printing is such a democratizer of modeling and wargaming. So we have a lot of 3D printed terrain, a lot of 3D printed equipment to help support the playing and the learning and the accessibility. So we allow those students to either do painting, modeling, gaming, and we sort of frame the whole thing with a goal at the end. Because I'm lucky enough to be in the UK, the Warhammer Alliance, they run a competition every year at the end of the year called the Schools League, Schools League Alliance competition. And what that means is you apply for a place in September, and it's either narrative or competitive. And it's for Warhammer 40,000, it's for Kill Team, it's for all of the major game systems. So we applied for that at the beginning of the year so that we had sort of a goal for all the students. So any of the students who had an army, that's what they were doing, all of their gaming, painting, everything. That was the goal, so they could be ready by July to attend. So it sort of helped, then all of the structure for the club fell back from that. So where did the ideas for my research question come from? So in one of my first modules, there was a specific report called the Graham Report. It was requisitioned in 2019 by the UK government, and it was looking at the potential driving factors behind exclusion within school. So what was causing students to sort of fall out of the schooling system? And some of the observations, some of the comments really inspired me to think about how my school club worked against that, how it worked to, instead of promote exclusion, to promote inclusion. So then there was also the ideas of both belonging and inclusion. So what does that look like? What is belonging? What is inclusion? So sort of the antithesis of belonging is not belonging. So rather the antithesis of inclusion would be exclusion. And exclusion is found to be more common in those students who are from minority groups or those from socially disadvantaged backgrounds and economically disadvantaged backgrounds. So by not feeling that they include in an area, there is a higher incidence of students not engaging within school because they don't feel like they belong at school. And as a result of that, it leads to poor academic performance, again, as highlighted by the Graham Report and O'Donnell et al. 2024. What can we do to sort of like push back against that? So what is inclusion? What was the inclusion that I was looking at? So Goran and Nilam, they came up with a few different sort of faces of inclusion. And the one that I chose to look at is inclusion is in building a community within schools and classrooms, somewhere that these students could all attend. Extracurricular clubs and the disadvantaged. So O'Donnell also pointed out or found that extracurricular clubs benefit the disadvantaged a greater factor than those who sort of already have that advantage. Those who aren't a PP student, they're not from a disadvantaged background. So by providing this in a school with such a high rate of disadvantage, there is the hope that then we would work better, rather they would benefit more from it. So Goodnow has a theory of belonging. So Goodnow stated in their theory of belonging, that's the one that I use throughout my research, that belonging in school could be perceived as relationships with teachers and peers. Goodnow summarised this belonging as not simply just enrolment, it's not just attending the club, but rather students' perception that others within the school and adults, especially adults, are there for them, that they count within the school. So they feel that they can belong within that club. Then sort of off of that, I looked into G's identity theory. So what people, and I'll talk more about this when I move on to identity theory and affinity spaces, but what looks like a space that you can belong. And I wanted Warhammer Club to be those spaces that belong, and not a club isn't by default an affinity space. I'll talk about that again in a later slide. I also was interested in the lack of literature on Warhammer in education and Warhammer in school. So what does that look like? Or rather, why is there that lack? What can I add to the conversation about how Warhammer positively affects students and positively affects their what is it? Sorry, someone's just walking through. Positively affects that sense of belonging and inclusion, and any other things that I might be able to discover or notice. There is a lot of research and literature around clubs. It's usually drama, sports, art, not these other more niche ones. So again, I wanted to see if I could help start to close that knowledge gap. So the theoretical framework that I used to sort of complete my studies, or rather complete my research. So I looked to synthesize G's identity and affinity spaces theory together with Goodenow's concept of belonging. So how could I combine those? So affinity spaces are areas where members come from different backgrounds to partake in a shared passion. Warhammer Club reflected those features with that mixed age participation, so from 11 years old up to 18 years old, peer mentoring. What I looked to do is encourage students to teach each other. That's why I asked that question earlier, Ben, about what did any students fall into sort of roles of like teacher and teacher and student. There was also like collaborative learning, because not everyone knows how to play the game, so they're all learning together, and deep engagement, so being interested, being engaged with the topic itself. So that's where Warhammer Club was that affinity space. Good now summarise student belonging as very much linked to their own perception of their school environment and the adults that inhabit it. So what did those students, how do those students feel within school? Do they feel that they belong? And how can we promote that? And how is that observed? So my research explores how Warhammer Club impacts their identity and the belonging, asking whether this extracurricular activity influences students' broader school experiences and helps them feel more connected to their educational environment and through the provision of this affinity space. How does this club, how does this extracurricular activity help those students feel that sense of belonging, that sense of inclusion? How do they feel that they're included? So what did I do? The club had been running for multiple years. And we had a lot of students start last year, and some that had been there since the sort of foundation of the club 2 years prior. I chose, so my positionality as a teacher is deeply shaped by those lived experiences. So if we have a look at my, ethnography somewhat, not ethnography rather, have a look at my, I've forgotten the word of it. Sorry, this is my first academic sort of presentation, so I really appreciate you guys being so supportive. So my positionality as a teacher is deeply shaped by my lived experiences, giving me a strong commitment to inclusion, equality and diversity, especially in my work with SEN students at this deprived state school. I approached this study through a social constructivist lens, believing that individuals grow through meaning social interactions and that with the right conditions, anyone can transcend their origins. So again, I was a student from a very poor background. I never imagined that I would be going to university. I never imagined that I would be a teacher. I never imagined that I'd be doing a master's. But it's through the people that I met, through those social interactions, that these things happened. And I believe that by providing that environment for those students, they too can sort of transcend their origins of those disadvantaged backgrounds. And that's just what I like to champion for them. I chose a qualitative focus group methodology for my study because it allowed participants to collaboratively explore their experiences of Warhammer Club and its impact on belonging, while accommodating the fact that I've got quite a small cohort size. So the amount of students I have in my club it ranges between 6 to 12. But there's always that minimum core that I had attending, and that minimum core really made it that safe space for the others. So this focus group allowed me to accommodate the fact that I had this somewhat small cohort size and the diverse needs of those students, including those with the SEN requirement, in a way that was both inclusive and also methodologically sound. These were then transcribed verbatim, and then they were member checked by the students themselves to make sure they agreed with what was said and what the representation was. There was just the one focus group for 1 hour that was transcribed, and I've done some transcription before, and I was very blown away by how difficult the transcription of a focus group was. It really helped that I'd known these students for up to 3 years for some of them to help me sort of discern their different voices. So because my participants were under 18 and many had SEN or in receipt of PP, I followed strict ethical guidelines from BERA to ensure informed consent, voluntary participation and safeguarding, while also being mindful of my dual role as teacher, researcher and the potential sort of power dynamics that could come up. So them wanting to say things that they thought would please me or they felt were the right answer. I wanted to make it as sort of genuine an experience as it was. I wanted to make it clear to the students as well that they could decline or withdraw from the study at any time without consequence, so they didn't feel like they were beholden to me in any way. So, analysis of findings through a thematic analysis. I used Braun and Clark's thematic analysis because it offered a flexible and structured way to code and interpret that qualitative data from my focus group, allowing me to generate meaningful themes aligned with my research question. There's always the difficulty with social sciences where you can't get nice numbers, so this helped sort of scratch my science teacher brain and allow me to provide something that I felt wasn't just a qualitative, or was sort of somewhat quantitative in a way, but while still being qualitative. So the process involves transcription, coding, theme identification, pattern analysis, and interpretation, which helped me draw rich insights from such a small cohort. While the analysis itself has limitations, such as limited guidance on the rigor and the language interpretation between the students and myself of their language, it's also the most suitable method for my study scopes and the needs of my particular participants. So now we're going to move into the themes. This is where we're going to look at what I noticed from the students in this focus group. I found three themes that I was able to discuss within the scope of my study. The first theme was belonging within school. So in this theme, I'll discuss about how participants reported feeling about school in general, how extracurricular activities impacted their school experience, and how the vertical nature of the club, where students of all year groups are welcome, has affected the sense of belonging in school and around the corridors. Now, I chose two specific quotes from the students that we were going to discuss today. So that first one. So this one was sort of the saddest quote from the entire study. It was one about a student who was mentioning the bullying that they experienced at school. And I felt that was an important one to mention today, because that's something that I think you were saying, Ben, that middle school, or for us secondary school, is that time where a lot of people are emotionally immature and it's very difficult to sort of find your people. So this was the experience of one of the students. So he said that when he was in school and the bullying starts, it happens, it takes its toll on him, and he has to deal with the people calling him names. And it takes a toll and it goes on. It just irritates him and it really starts piling up. We've got the quote there. So from this, N is talking about his experiences, how it takes a toll on him, how being in school is a chore for this student. He is challenged. It's a stressful place. And from this instance, this student doesn't seem like they feel like they belong, because they're being othered by other students. And this could lead to sort of feelings of lack of self-worth, those sort of things. So it's interesting to mention where I was able to identify where a student was feeling that lack of belonging. So then we have another student. This student's a little bit older. And he talked again about how there was that difficulty within the school environment, the difficulty in how he was treated. I've just got the quote up there for you guys to read. So he sort of alludes to the difficulties he had within school in terms of teaching and learning, arguing that school is set and rigid. It doesn't really adapt to his needs. This is all his words. So these are his experiences, his interpretations of school. He argues that this limits the availability of education to some students, himself included. It makes him feel othered. It makes him feel that he is less confident within class. Pardon, sorry?
You're back. It's fine. Sorry, your sound just cut out for a moment. You're fine. Sorry.
No worries. Where did I cut out? Just so I know.
Oh, it was only about 10 seconds. It's all right.
Oh, no worries. Okay. So I'll just quickly summarize on this one then. So he felt that through his experiences within school and with the teachers, that they didn't make him feel belong. They didn't adapt their own teaching to a way that was working for him. And that made him feel like he was not part of the community. That's what he said. That's how he's feeling. And then, so from these first two quotes, we can see that these students, to a degree, feel that they do not belong within school. But then we look at the next two themes, and we look at how through the club, we're starting to build them up, as it were, and help them find coping mechanisms or coping strategies. So next we have theme 2, belonging within the wider community. So not just school, not just lessons, the whole thing sort of around it, and clubs as well. So in this theme, I'm going to discuss how students in the focus group described the impact they feel Warhammer Club has had on other facets of their lives pertaining to their sense of belonging within the wider community. Students described how attending the club in school led to their engagement with activities outside of the school community, for example, by engaging in external tournaments and competition. So for example, engaging in external tournaments and competition, like I said, the end of year sort of competition up at Nottingham at Warhammer World, where we were competing with other schools doing the same things. How Warhammer Club helps students develop social skills in general, and how Warhammer Club has encouraged students to be authentic and passionate about their interests in general. So again, I've chosen two quotes that we're going to just look over and discuss at the moment. So the first one, there we go. So this was one student talking about the tournaments and the competitions throughout the year. So I completely agree. The tournaments that we've done, though I didn't attend the painting competitions, but the tournaments, I certainly felt included. I didn't feel as much as I was there just to meet a quota. Like, you need a certain amount of people. They need to meet a number. I felt like I was wanted there, and I definitely did want to be there. So I definitely felt included in the tournaments. I think, funny enough, I feel most valued when I lost at the tournament. So this student, he came the absolute bottom, winner of the wooden spoon. Although I lost, there was sort of like an inside joke, and it felt nice to have that joke there. It wasn't that they were taking the mick at me for losing. It was the fact that I lost that was the joke, and it was interesting. I felt valued for that. It gives a joke that we all had. Yeah, it wasn't that competitive. It felt like my presence was valued there instead of just being there for the sake of losing. So we can see that at the competition, at the tournament, this student in particular felt like they belonged there. They were part of that community. They sensed that they were included. They describe, so we talk about those words like valued, and the fact that he felt that he could comfortably take jokes from others. We can see that Warhammer fans are seen somewhat more mature in different ways. And there's the understanding that winning is not just the whole point of a game. And that's something that we throughout the year talk about with the students. It's like the point of playing Warhammer is not to win the board game. The point of playing Warhammer doing Warhammer is that it's an entire activity, it's an entire hobby, an entire sort of universe of a hobby. There's so much more to it than just that. And I love that my students really see that. It's the fun of playing that game. So if we look at the next quote then. So this one was from the youngest member of our club, so 11 years old, brand new to it. And I'm going to read this one again verbatim because it's such a lovely quote. So it helps me find confidence within it. It helps me with social interactions, because if I didn't go into this club, then I wouldn't be like I am now. I wouldn't make like a stronger bond with the friends I already have. I mean, it would be way more difficult for me to speak out in friend groups. If they want me to like contribute in something, because I'll just be really timid and shy about it. So this student was talking about how she's really, really shy, but she's finding through those interactions with the other students, she's finding that she is building her confidence when talking to friends outside. There's leading to a better quality of friendship with her pre-existing friends, that stronger bond that she's talking about. And she's learning to stretch those interpersonal skills with those older students that are slightly more mature. It's helping her sort of grow and find herself. So we'll move on to the last theme then. So theme three, where were we? There we go. Theme 3, development of an affinity identity. So in this one, we discuss how Warhammer Club is an affinity space for students who attend it, how the confidence students acquire from attending the club can counter negative feelings they have about being judged by other students in school, and how the collaborative nature of the club and projects lead to a collective affinity identity inside and outside of the club itself. So our first quote. So there's plenty of people that I wouldn't have been friends with at the club due to the differences in year group. This is from a student who is highlighting that sort of verticality that I've mentioned a few times, that they're able to meet friends outside of their own year group. They mentioned the fact that there's this judgment inherent with those social interactions sometimes, but he's learned that all of these students who attend the club, they're all part of this community. They all belong to this group. And he's finding that through this verticality, as it were, it's nice to be able to see that there is that larger group of people who do not judge, and that judgment disappears, like he says, when he's at the club. He doesn't feel that judgment that most students do feel in like a secondary school or a middle school setting. He finds that he's finding this sort of safe group within those at Warhammer Club. He wouldn't have found these friends because if he followed the standard sort of routes of clubs, extracurricular activities, and just schooling within the UK, you very rarely mix with students outside of your year group. So he talks about how he's glad that he has these new friends that he may never have had without the club. And then if we look at the last quote, this is a very large quote. I'm not going to read it because, again, it'll take a very long time. I'll just give you a moment to look over it yourself. But this one really helps talk about Warhammer Club as that affinity space. So it emphasizes the adaptability and that inclusivity of Warhammer Club. It shows adaptability because the club can sort of function differently for different people. As I said at the beginning, the hobby isn't just a board game. The hobby isn't just painting. There's so much more to the hobby. Reading, just discussing, having this sort of space where you can share ideas. And that's what we've seen. It also shows inclusivity because there are no initial exclusion criteria for joining the club. All you need to do to join the club at our school is turn up. I know in the previous question there was someone talked about the cost of Warhammer. I'll talk about that later, but by removing that barrier, by allowing students to enter, they usually find a way to sort of take part regardless. And that's through the support of the club and support of the wider Warhammer community. Historically, some students rarely have needed reminders about how to act socially. Very rarely do I need to step in and sort of point out what is correct and what is incorrect behavior. Other than that, they are very, very respectful of one another. And it's become this sort of safe space for anyone. We've grown to a mixed sex space. We've got multiple genders. We have those who have multiple sort of sexuality identities. And what's lovely is that it's becoming less of a male-dominated space in our school because sort of all it takes is the first 2 or 3 girls to attend, and then it becomes this much larger thing. And by having it as such a broad sort of hobby, that's sort of less strict in its attendance of year groups and genders, it means that those students, or rather it means that people can feel that there's like a safe space that they can go to. So the Warhammer Club just ends up being this inclusive safe space that just anyone can attend to, which those students highlighted and talked about throughout that focus group. So I'd say the implications of my study is that I found that Warhammer Club fosters a strong sense of belonging and inclusion among the students, especially those who feel less accepted in their wider school environment. Now, I highlighted just some of the, certain quotes from there, but by the end of it, by the end of the focus group, when we were discussing and talking, they really began to realize how much they accepted each other, or they appreciated the relationship with each other, and how that helped them outside of class, how that helped them outside of school. The previous student that I mentioned, who talked about their feeling that the school didn't adapt to their learning, by having a space within the school that they had, it was very sort of hands-off and just you were given the equipment, they felt that they could thrive there, and it helped them sort of decide what they wanted to do post-school. So we have the ability to do workplace apprenticeships in the UK. So that means that students can go and pick up a trade instead of going to college, or rather sort of like the later years of high school. And this sort of opened that up as an opportunity to one of the students that they never would have sort of considered otherwise. And it was, even though it meant that they ended up leaving the school, not returning for the sixth form, it was fantastic. They found value in that way. It highlights also the study that the value of extracurricular activities as affinity spaces support well-being and identity development, particularly for students from those disadvantaged backgrounds. And on these findings, I would recommend that national guidance help promote diverse and inclusive extracurricular offerings. Sports clubs, art clubs, drama clubs, they're fantastic, they're fine, but they're sort of like the bread and butter. We need these more niche clubs, knitting clubs, we need crocheting clubs, we need LARP clubs, D&D clubs, Warhammer clubs, things where they're smaller, they're more passionately ran, but children can sort of find their space, find their people, and build on that and feel safer and grow. I think that's what's fantastic about university. When you go to Freshers Week in the UK, you find your societies, you join them, you find your groups, your people. We need to bring that a little bit lower, bring that into those secondary schools and encourage attendance of those. So answering that research question finally. So reminder, so we were looking at how participation in Warhammer Club, when it's seen as an affinity space, influenced the students' sense of belonging within that school. So despite challenges such as we had delays, we've had a lot of building works going on at the school. We've had temporary closures, long closures. The competition tournament was cancelled 2 days before by the school because a football tournament was happening and they needed more teachers within the school. And it took me kicking off quite dramatically and demanding that we still go to our tournament and our competition to allow it to happen. I know that some other teachers who might not have been as confident, they might have just said, okay, I won't run it. And that would have destroyed the kids' sort of enthusiasm within the hobby. So I just worry that Warhammer Club or those more niche clubs may not be seen as a serious option. So we see the club as an inclusive space that's positively impacted the students and their experience of school and their peer relationships. And ultimately, finding that non-traditional clubs like that Warhammer Club play a vital role in fostering that belonging and help improving that well-being, particularly for any students who feel marginalised in those mainstream school settings, providing them that opportunity to find their space. Not everyone's going to play for a football team, not everyone's going to play for a rugby team, but these students got a chance to represent the school in a national competition. And I think that was a fantastic opportunity for them, which helped them feel like they belong to the school and to a greater community. Now, I've spoken so much and you guys have listened so well. Thank you. Are the questions ready?